to Diving into the Discourse. I'm your host, Carmen Ramos Chandler, and joining me today is MariaElena Zavala, a professor of biology, and she's been at the university a very long time. And we're going to start off with talking a little bit about Dr. Zavala, but also talk about her research in looking at gene manipulation to improve plant root growth, as well as exploring ways to make bean plants more edible as we face the impact of climate change on our food sources. So welcome, Dr. Zavala.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
First off, let's get the history out of the way. How long have you been at CSUN?
I was trying to think about that just now. I think I'm beginning my 36th or 7th year here.
And you were the first Latina to get a Ph.D. in botany.
Yeah.
In the United States.
Yes, according to my friends. They tell me this. I know for sure that that's true at the University of California, Berkeley. I'm the first Mexican-American, Chicana, to have earned a Ph.D. from that now defunct department. And it was one of the oldest departments. Mm-hmm. It was actually one of the first departments to have someone earn a Ph.D. in that department as a female. So, but interestingly enough, they did not hire their first female professor until about 1974. As a full professor. Oh, the old habits die hard. So it was seen as a man's world. And there were women there who had PhDs, some of whom had earned their PhD there and who worked in the herbarium or worked in the collections. But it wasn't until about 74, maybe 75, that someone was hired as a professor.
Can I switch gears a little? Why did you choose to study botany?
Well, I chose to study botany because when I went to college, I thought I was going to be a biology major. And then I went in to talk to, there was no biology major at Pomona. It was zoology and botany. And so I went to talk to the zoologists, and they said, why would you want to study plants? And I said, wow. So I went to talk to the botany professor, and he was much more interesting to me with regards to what plants do and the importance of plants, and also talked about the evolution and the changes in flora. So how plants actually migrate up and down, up mountains, down mountains, depending on the weather, but also up and down longitudinally. So it was really pretty cool. And I thought, man, I think that's really interesting. Besides that, my grandmother was a sobadora curandera. Uh-huh. And so plants were a very important part of my life. My dad was a farm worker, another important reason for a while. Then he ended up, when my older brother was in school, my mom decided that he's a shy kid, and that he was getting more shy by having to move from Laverne to Camarillo and back.
With their crops and stuff.
For lemons. It was lemons and oranges and things like that he was picking. So my dad gave up his entrepreneurial spirit and went to work in a factory.
Now, my grandma was a curandera as well. And let's explain a little bit what a curandera is, particularly one who uses herbs.
Yes. So it's a medicine woman, essentially, using traditional herbs and to help people feel better. And she used massage. Mm-hmm. My great-grandmother used massage in her practice. And I remember that she would have people come by on Saturdays, and the line would be out the door to have her consultations. Yeah, and then, just outside her garden was an incredible space with many, many different kinds of herbal remedies that were available to her, that she knew about. And so that was that.
It hasn't been until recently, and I say in the past 10, 15, maybe even 20 years, but in my mind, given my age, that's recent, that Western cultures have become more respectful of the healing properties, not curing entirely,
Right.
but healing properties that nature has.
Right. Absolutely. That's really true. There's a whole field called complementary medicine where you use meditation or yoga or herbs to help people. And so, it's really hard to actually have a cure. We learn the body self-heals. So these cures are often just opportunities for the body to take care of itself and to gain an advantage over whatever is ailing it, not necessarily cure it.
Why did you continue to pursue? I mean, you chose plants. You chose to look at, in many ways, well, with genetic mutation, with roots, but a lot of your goal is to make our ability to feed ourselves easier as the world changes. It
Yes.
becomes more hostile. Why did you choose that as your...
Well, initially, I was just interested in reproduction in plants. How do plants reproduce themselves? There were some very interesting kinds of plant reproductive systems. So it was a curiosity for me, just like satisfying my curiosity. So, and then I moved on to something a bit more practical with roots. Roots are only make other roots. So stems make flowers and leaves and other branches and things like that. But roots only make roots. So they're good at what they do. And they are the sponges. They're miners, as someone coined. They're miners of the soil. And so they provide all of the nutrients that a plant needs. They pick it up molecule by molecule. That's a lot of stuff that has to get picked up. And then it's translocated or transported, depending on what it is, up into the shoot parts where it can be distributed properly.
I never thought of them as miners. I just think of them these hairy strings at the bottom of a plant, but they're rather powerful.
They are very powerful. And it's really interesting because roots set up an environment that can promote or inhibit the growth of bacteria around them that helps them grow even better. They make associations with fungi so that they can collect a relatively rare thing, phosphorus, in the soil. And they set up these mutualistic relationships with fungi. The fungi form these nets, and then they absorb this extra phosphorus or phosphorus that's around, and it gets transported into the plant. And the fungus gets some sugars out of the deal. So it's a nice mutualistic relationship.
Why are roots so, for the novice, for the people who actually don't pay attention to science, why are roots so important to the plant as opposed to just the thing that sticks in the ground?
Because they absorb stuff. They absorb the water. They absorb minerals, all nutrients that the plant needs to make proteins, to make cell walls, to make lipids, nucleic acids. We ingest. We just ingest our stuff. Plants have to take the basic molecules that build the stuff up and convert it into biological organic molecules. And so we've learned to use those molecules and take advantage of the plant's ability to make more than it needs, because that's what seeds are. The seeds are very important storage organs, and plants need them for the next generation of little plants and babies. But they make enough seeds that we can actually tap into them, and then we eat them, like beans, corn, things like that.
I don't think we ever think of, I think the last time we pay attention to plants is like in high school biology class where they teach us the basics of plants. But I don't think most of us truly appreciate, and it's the wrong term, but the magic that occurs from the roots on up in a plant and how important it is for our survival without even thinking about it.
Yeah, no plants, no you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's really amazing. We can't go out in the sun and just go, okay, I've eaten enough, let's go in. That doesn't work. Plants do it all the time. And they also keep the environment a little bit cooler because they release, in the way that they pull these materials up from the roots is through what's something called evapotranspiration, so that the leaves are giving off water, and for every molecule that they give off, another one replaces it, and then another one can enter from the bottom. So you can have like a giant straw. Yeah, and so it's really interesting and cool. But if we think about the plumbing that's involved and the flow of materials, and then the plant transforms them, because from the energy of the sun, they transform water and carbon dioxide into carbohydrates. And carbohydrates, plants can convert into anything. So plants, we can't do that. There are things called essential amino acids, right? They're only essential for us. So it's kind of human-centered, kind of. But plants can make all that they need. Wow. Yeah, or absorb it,
Why did you choose to look at genetic mutations in roots, and what do you hope to achieve with that type of research?
Well, what we made, we're making mutants that will, let's say, so plants have hormones. They have plant growth regulators. And so these plant growth regulators are under pretty tight control because the plant needs to control its growth. It just can't grow wildly. And so we know the hormone that I like to work with, like to think about, is a thing called cytokinin. And cytokinin is full of nitrogen. And nitrogen is very difficult for plants to actually accumulate from the soil. They can't go eat that beef steak, right? They can't. And so what happens is that the plant has a way of storing the cytokinin in an inactive form. So when stresses happen, the cytokinin gets sequestered because it's very easy there's an enzyme that can break it down, but if you put a little sugar on it in the right place, the enzyme won't recognize it anymore, and it stays put. It's not active, and it might even be inhibitory. We have some evidence for that, but it will not cause growth to happen. Okay, and so the plant is regulating this all the time. And so what we're trying to do is trying to understand this hormone is involved not only in the root growth, but a good healthy amount of it gets transported up the developing seed and causes the shoot part to grow as well. Yeah. Yeah. So the plant has to regulate this because it's an important molecule, and so it does. And so I'm interested in trying to make to make roots that are a bit more prolific, so that they can gather more stuff up, or they can make more associations with these fungi or bacteria that will pull stuff up into them as well.
And that would make the plant healthier
and
bigger, abundant. And if it were a plant that we relied on, or other animals relied on for nutrition, or we rely on for that cycle of life where everything's related. God, wow.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting stuff to think about.
Absolutely. I'm not. Every time I talk to you, I pause and think how sophisticated those plants in our yard are. And I never think about that. It's almost like we don't give them a sentient personality, but boy, are they smart.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is that people say, oh, these plants communicate. And I was at a American Society for Plant Biology conference just a couple of weeks ago, and unfortunately, I had to go to another session. But when I came out, my friends were buzzing, and I said, what went on? What went on? And they said somebody did this really cool experiment where they put two plants close together, and then, but they weren't touching. And then they touched very gently, and then they damaged one of the plants. And what happened, the other plant wasn't damaged, but it began to respond with the damage response.
But they were initially not together.
They were apart, and the only one of them got injured. But that sent a message to the other plant, say, hey, we're under attack. You got to make these defense molecules. So, then I said, wow, that's really cool. But what did they do to the roots? Because we know roots are intertwined, and there's really strong evidence that a lot of the messaging goes through the roots, but they didn't test that.
So they didn't see if they were connected?
No, they were in different pots.
Really?
They were in different pots, yeah.
Wow. Oh, that's so exciting.
It's
kind
really
of scary, but kind of exciting at the same
neat.
time.
It's really neat. Yeah, it's very,
wow.
Yeah, so we don't know their language.
Yeah.
It's a chemical language. And so we're just beginning to learn about that. But anyway, so yeah, I really like plants. They're stealthy.
They're sneaky.
They're sneaky. Yeah.
You're breaking barriers all the way through as you go from Pomona and you go to grad school and you get your Ph.D. And you tell people, well, I want to study plants. What is the reaction to that?
The most important reaction was from my parents, and they said, "Yeah, go for it." because and my grandfather. I lived in an intergenerational home, and my grandfather always had a garden in the back, and sometimes he had goats, and sometimes we had a turkey. Oh, it was about my pet turkey. It was supposed to be turkey dinner, but it didn't make it for Thanksgiving. I said, no, that's my friend. So my dad went out and bought another turkey. Rabbits, chickens, goats. Yeah, that was basically, and then a garden, a vegetable garden.
And then you got a Ph.D. in botany.
Yeah. Yes. So, I mean, I just think that, I think my parents tried to encourage my older sister to do business stuff, but she's really artistic. And the classes she really enjoyed were this modern dance artistic thing that she had to make up her own dance, and that was kind of fun. But the other thing she did very well in was setting up a showroom or setting up showrooms for clothes or things like that. And she excelled in that. Other stuff, not so much. And so when I went, I'm 5 years younger than my older sister. So when I went to college, they just said, do what you want.
We tried putting one of you down a path that didn't work. You're on your own.
Yeah. So I think that was really good of them. And so they were just happy that I was going to college.
What did your peers, as you started moving through the ranks of academia, respond? I mean, you're a brown woman.
Yes.
I don't know how you can't erase that.
Nope. Well, my parents said my dad was very much into saying, you look the part, so you better learn Spanish, and you better understand that people will see you and they'll think things, and you just have to know who you are.
As you progressed as an academic, I mean, why did you were a groundbreaker. You broke through glass ceilings. You chose to teach at CSUN. Why?
The students.
Let's hear about that. Why?
Well, my interview at CSUN was supposed to have been a chip so that I could play at the institution where I was previously employed. Okay, and so I was told by one of my mentors there, said, "Oh, go," and then you'll come back, and because these guys work like in quotes engineers, and you have to demonstrate that somebody else wants what you're producing, so they'll hire you here. And I said, CSUN is close to home, and if I apply for something, it's because I want it or psychologically prepared to leave. And he said, "But you just bought a house." I said, "Yeah, and we just fixed it, and it's really gorgeous, nice little house. But I am prepared to. If I'm offered the position, I would leave." And so once I came here and interviewed the faculty, and some of them were not so eager to have someone who was so eager about research joining the ranks. But I went and I had a session with the students. And I could see so much potential that was completely untapped. And CSUN at the time was very highly ranked for the number of students who went on to earn PhDs in STEM. And I looked around and asked these guys, what do you, are you involved in research or blah, blah? And they just looked at me like I was from outer space because they needed to work. They needed to earn money so they could stay in school, and volunteering in a lab was not reasonable for them, and they wanted to optimize, their experiences. And I said, yeah, but if you want to go to medical school or something, you're going to need a letter of recommendation, and the best way to get that letter of recommendation is for you to have a relationship with a faculty member. Mm-hmm. And so, and the students said, well, we don't have that here. We just, it's just so hard. So we talked to them some more, and they were just bright kids. And I was thinking, man, I hope I get the job. Yeah, it really was. And then, so then I was offered the position. And I also did, it was almost simultaneous. I discovered I was pregnant. I go, oh dear. So that was another bit of problem. But so I said, okay. So they offered me the position, and then I said, well, I'm pregnant, and so I need to maybe delay arriving. And they said, no. They asked me when the child was due. It was due in February, and they said, well, we'll make it work out. We'll figure it out. And so I had an NSF grant. So my research is supported. And so in about this, they were convinced that it was just all working out. So I looked at the, Section 600 and looked for maternity leave, and there wasn't any. Yeah. And so I go,
so many years ago.
It was a long time ago. And I go, oh my God. So I went and I talked to my chair, who was at that time Warren Furumoto, who had hired me. I just really love that man.
So do I.
And his family was really generous with us when we arrived. But in any case, so Warren said, oh, I'm really busy right now. Come back on Monday. And so I did come back on Monday. By that time, I was kind of like ticked because I realized if I had the child Friday night, I could stay with it for a week and a half, because I only had eight months. I would only been there 8 months, right? So, because you got a day a week. I mean, a day a month, right, of sick leave.
Yeah.
So anyway, so then he said, I walked in on Monday and I said, I was looking at, he said, I looked at Section 600 too, and this is horrible. I didn't realize it was like this, right? So you have to remember that at that time, there had not been a baby born in the department for about 17 years, 18 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Daniela broke.
That's right, exactly. So I'm saying the whole, it was just, it was mostly mature people, mostly senior faculty, and they had their children either before they arrived at CSUN or they didn't have them. And so anyway, so that was that. So so they did work. So then he said, well, I think you need to go talk to the provost. I said, you guys told me that it was going to work out. And so, so they figured it out. And part of my task, the way that they figured it out was that I should write a MARC grant, a Minority Access to Research. It's what's called Minority Access to Research Careers, and it was an honors program for students in the last 2 years of their undergraduate degree to get prepared to enter a competitive PhD program. Yeah. And so the thing that was interesting was that when I came here and talked to people about this, I knew the history, I knew about CSUN, but they could not remember one person who was not white, who had earned a PhD in the College of Science and Mathematics. They couldn't recall. There was one person in a program, but they hadn't quite earned it yet, which is horrible because, the presence in the population was significant. Yeah. We weren't in HSI yet, but we were getting close.
Wow, that's nearly 40 years ago. Boy, have we changed.
Yeah.
But you got the grant. You got the Mark grant.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's no question about it.
Yeah, I got the Mark grant, yeah. The way I did it was I approached it like a science project. So you read. No, I'm not kidding. You read. You talk to people who have the grant or who have a similar project, and you say, okay, I want to be like you. And so how did you do it, and what are the potential problems that I might have, And so just went at it.
And we've had since then a program in the College of Science and Mathematics, through biology, that has given students, undergraduates, the skills they need to succeed in a competitive doctoral program.
Yep, but it's not just so it's centered in the department in the college, but it has 9 different departments in 3 different, depending on sometimes 4 different colleges.
Yeah, it is giving our students the tools they need to succeed in the academic arena as careers.
Right, but also in the government.
Yeah.
And in
private sector.
Private sector. Lots of private sector people.